Good afternoon, everyone. Conversation Day continues here on Trini Good Media, and we have a very intriguing conversation for you, one that is particularly appropriate for the times that we're living in. How important has the issue of trust become? Specifically in the context of our conversation today, organizational culture. And we have a mixed group of experts and people with different backgrounds and experiences who are here to discourse and dialogue with us today. I'm going to start with the intros from my left. We have Anthony Bisnath, who is an entrepreneur, a food advocate, and a south of the lighthouse Dadian. Saltman, as I like to say. Going on then to the center, we have Daryl Joseph, who's a consulting psychologist and a director at Josal Consulting, and he has many years in employee assistance, and that issue in particular with COVID of helping managers deal with the leadership challenges and the stress that they're under, how they can guide their employees through this time. Yep. And at the end here we have Frances Hanson-Lewis. She is wife, mommy, geologist, and also has a background in environmental and social assessments. So we are coming together with very different perspectives here. But Daryl, I want to start with you, because trust is something that we have seen diminish, almost plummet. If you think about the average sense of trust that we have with the people who are around us, people that we know, people in our family, people that we don't know, everybody has become a risk during COVID. Everybody has become possibly a health threat. And then that diminishing trust, in one sense, has also been alongside some catapulting trust in entities that you may normally take a second look at, be a little bit critical of, that it's almost been without question, some of the trust that we've seen placed in other entities. What have you seen in the last 3 months in terms of the way that we trust and don't trust people?
Okay. Well, put the things in context. Trust is the glue that keeps relationships together. Trust is also a prerequisite for safety and a sense of safety. When something like a pandemic happens, safety immediately goes out the door for the same reasons you said. You don't know if the person next to you has it, you don't know if you have it, you don't know if the next person you encounter, okay? In the workplace, and bring it into an organizational context, the challenges with respect to trust, for example, between, let's say, management and staff, these issues are amplified. There may have already been a level of distrust in many organizations, which, there's big people here, we're talking straight, right? That happens. Now, with all of the uncertainty as a result of COVID-19 and business and the impact on business, the issue of trust is even more highlighted and more important. Do I trust my manager when my manager tells me my job is safe? Do I trust the organization when the organization says we're not going under, we're doing well?
Right.
What about that organization over there that just let go 300 people? Is that happening to me next? So trust is always an important and key element, but it's magnified 1,000 times now in an organizational context in particular.
How much do you think that mistrust or uncertainty about trust gets amplified because of so much of what we don't know, which is in this situation one of the most unique experiences we've all been through in our lives? This global health situation that we can't predict, that we can't control, and we don't know a lot about, especially in the beginning. We know a lot more now, but do you think that makes the ability to invest trust a lot more difficult? Anthony?
Absolutely. As a business owner, when this entire pandemic started, we were reliant on all of our decisions, and we couldn't even plan for the medium term or for the long term. We were literally planning for day-to-day activities. We did not know what was going to happen next. And the way we made our decisions was by the information that we received, and many times fellow business owners would call up one another, WhatsApp one another, hey, did you guys hear the news? Hear the news, but where is the news coming from? Right? So we have this cliche that's come up, the new normal, right? But the new normal isn't really a COVID term. The new normal for us has been the 24/7 news cycle and where the news comes from, a lot of times from unverified sources. So I may have a fellow business owner who will WhatsApp me and said, hey, I heard this decision was made to shut down businesses from tomorrow. Do I believe that? Do I trust him?
Right.
Right? Do I make my decision for tomorrow
There was a
based
lot
on
of
him?
that.
Right?
Yeah.
And where is he getting his news from? So he
Right.
may say, well, I saw it on Facebook. Who did you see it from? Right? So, you know, like when we were all growing up, regardless of whether it was the 70s, 80s, or 90s, we always teased the other kids who would snitch on us as being the news carriers.
Right.
Now, all of us have grown up in some way, fashion, or form as being the news carriers, but it's really important that we know where that news is coming from and trust those sources. Because also as someone who's worked in the corporate world and having to commute from south of the Lighthouse up to Port of Spain, we speak about so many productive hours being lost in traffic. You know, that's always a revolving conversation that's hovering around, and the solution for that is always about decentralization, right? But how many productive hours are lost when we don't trust where our news is coming from? Because we're making decisions on reliable sources, and when we make a decision and we realize that it's been premised on wrong news or incorrect news, now we have to go back and dial that back where we've lost the trust of some of our employees, some of our supporting businesses. So as a business owner, trusting where that news comes from that impacts your day-to-day, your week-to-week, your month-to-month, or where you're going to be at the end of the year. It's so important.
So I feel like the spotlight just went this way.
Yes.
Because organizational culture, steering both your fellow managers and your employees through an uncertain time means that you need solid information. And a lot of people decided to bypass the normal purveyors and filters of the information and go straight to the source. And the source had a lot of time to speak directly to people. When you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with decisions to do with your children, to do with your business, how did you decide that you were going to make choices for the next day, for the next week, for the next month? Did you prefer the distilled, filtered version, or were you sitting down there getting it firsthand?
All right, so let me give it to you from my perspective. I have a science background, so that this whole thing was very interesting for me in the way that information came about. And no, I definitely am one. I'm also a news hound. So I am on social media. I do a lot of reading of various news articles, and I'm very particular about where that news comes from. The trust part of it now is where the science came in for me. This is a novel coronavirus. So it's we have had coronaviruses that we've known since the 60s now. That's what we have read. However, this was the first, our first interaction with this particular one, and we did not know too much about the disease. And in terms of the trust aspect of it, some of the information, and I want to go outside of the organizational thing, just coming from sources in the world, the WHO, the CDC, the US, where we always look at our cable from, and the CDC, we believe this information, and the WHO. And I personally, because a lot of it I didn't find the information was detailed enough, some of it just didn't make sense to me. For example, I watch a lot of CNN, and I love Sanjay Gupta, and I would hear him say, don't wear a mask, which didn't make sense to me. And I kept looking at, so I get news from China. I was looking at Hong Kong, Taiwan, different places, and I'm seeing that in Asia, a big part of how they were trying to contain the virus was everybody wearing masks. So I started reading more about this. I started, researching about the different types of materials and that kind of thing. And we would have discussions on my Facebook page with many of my friends who are in similar kinds of fields and that kind of thing. And people would say, no, but they say not to wear that. I say, but it doesn't make sense. Read this, read that, read. So in terms of decision making, yes, a lot of the information was, well, it's secondary information because I'm not collecting it myself in a lab.
Right.
But I went to news sources looking for things. So I would listen to the press conferences, I would listen to the local ones, the international ones. But in terms of making, it's not only the information that you're getting now, but how you're analyzing that information. And and learning to trust based on what you're reading from different sources. So I went outside of the West. We get everything from the West. We believe the West. But this time, the West was not necessarily the best source of information for this virus. It came from the Far East. The Far East was used to making decisions about this type of virus, and they turned out to have the better answers, let's be honest. So a lot of that was information filtering analysis. That's where a lot of the trust came for me.
Right.
In terms of my decision, yes.
Scientific approach.
In terms of the decision making, definitely.
So with information changing then, Daryl, how do you coach business owners like Anthony, managers who have departments of people looking at them for all the answers, to be able to navigate a time when the information may change, as Frances is saying, you know, you're getting maybe one sense one day, but something 2 weeks later is different to what was said before. How does a manager, how does a head of department, a business owner decide what their approach is in this time where things may change and still manage expectations, anxieties, and stress and engender that trust?
Yeah, you have to decide what your, let's say, policy is with respect to what information you're going to trust and from which sources. Now, I think before the Black Lives Matter and the protests and the violence and whatnot came about, the biggest problem we had competing along with the pandemic was this infodemic.
Yeah.
Where we're receiving way too much information, this tidal wave of information, and not just the volume, but the divergence in points of view.
Yeah.
It's a mild flu, and only old people get it. Anybody can get it. So
Wasn't that just Donald Trump, or
no?
No,
That was the scientist in the beginning.
I would love to say about that guy, but I wouldn't say it.
That was the scientist in the beginning, believe it or not.
This is what I had decided. I decided up front, and this is what I had been advising clients and other people. Let's stick as much as possible. This is a medical issue, and therefore it has a basis and a background in science. So let's try to stick as much as possible to verifiable scientific sources, all right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have just heard about the WHO in the last few months. The WHO has been around for decades.
Is that true?
And they've done fantastic.
Wow, that's interesting.
They've done fantastic work, all right? Yes, you know, there may be questions and issues and whatnot, but generally speaking, you can trust what they say on scientific issues. Our government has, in the beginning, was daily press conferences, where, you know, certain people became heroes from those press conferences. I'm not calling names of people, real calm and cool, and nothing could ruffle them. Everybody knows them now and that sort of thing, you know. So they have been, in my mind, a steady source of reliable information.
I agree with that.
So I personally have stuck to the press conferences we've been having. Sources like the WHO, PAHO, the Centers for Disease Control, been a little bit inconsistent.
Very iffy.
But that's where I have drawn my decision-making ideas from, those sources. You see the YouTube video from the doctor who is this specialist and says so.
Pandemic.
Huh?
Did you hear about pandemic?
Yes. Right? And you see the WhatsApp message you get in the night saying, everybody have to know this now, so tell everybody. You see that?
Yeah.
How much of trust is honesty? So, especially because from a business planning perspective, you may know that if this thing goes on for another month, your business may really have to make some tough decisions. But you don't know for sure that this will go on that long. You don't know how honest to be with your employees. You want to give them a head start to be able to plan, to be able to prepare, but you don't want to scare them. How much of trust in a time like this is based on honesty? And is there such a thing as too much honesty or unnecessary honesty?
That's a yes or no answer, but my personal philosophy is being very, very transparent. And I believe once you're transparent, there is no questioning or no doubting when you say something that you actually mean it, and you show it through your words, your deeds, your actions, all of the time. And when this started, we saw what was going to happen. We knew it was inevitable that we were heading for a shutdown, national shutdown. And we tried to cope with it and deal with it and prepare ourselves for it, but then it eventually came. And when it came, we were okay. When I say we were okay, yes, people were panicking. They didn't know how they're going to make their next payment, how they're going to put food on the table, and all these things. But it worked out because you saw the entire country coming together and helping people in need. And that was very, very comforting. But from a business perspective, being at home for 2 weeks initially, you're like, okay, we can do this, right? A month, I don't know about that, right? Because you know that you're going to have bills coming in. Then you realize, hold on, we're all in this together. We're going to be fine. Then 1 month turns into 2 months, and 2 months turns into 3 months. And during that period, personally, I can say that once we were in touch with everybody and all of our stakeholders, like my main supplier had COVID and was hospitalized for a month in New York. He almost died.
Oh, wow.
Right? And he's fine now, but we were able to contact him and he reached out to us. And you know what his question was? He's like, do you guys have food? And we're like, yes, we do. Right? And it's that genuine caring. You know, if he were to say, Anthony, well, this is the situation here, I'm not going to doubt him. I'm going to trust him, right? Because of how he's reached out. And I always say, for the 3 months, we were okay. We knew what was coming. We did all the different scenario planning situations as to what's going to happen in Plan A, in Scenario 1, Scenario 2, Scenario 3. But my business was due to open in Phase 4. The Prime Minister sped it up and brought us back into Phase 3.
Right.
And do you know when I panicked? I panicked that Saturday afternoon when he said, go for you guys on Monday morning. Because now it was time to actually execute. And you're thinking, I don't know if I'm opening on Monday, but I don't know if I'm going to have a business on Tuesday morning.
Right.
So we scheduled meetings with landlords and stakeholders and everybody and went into those meetings, you know, being pessimistic, thinking the worst was going to happen, because you don't want to build yourself up and then be disappointed. And the reassurance that we got, because, for example, our landlord did not send us a letter. We knew that we were going to be liable for some portion of our rent over those 3 months because we have our items and we have our space being secured by security guards and everything like that. So we knew it was coming. We didn't know to what extent it was coming.
Right.
But the approach that our landlord in particular took, I have to say that it was very reassuring. It was they tried their best to calm everybody and let them know that we are in this together with you guys. And we're not going to make any absolute decisions. There's not going to be any black and white. We're willing to operate in that gray area and accommodate persons going forward. So hearing that from them and seeing their actions over the last 3 months leads us to trust them when they say that they're going to be there for you.
Sure.
I would love to follow up on something that he just talked about, which was when you guys gave me that topic about trust. It's so much about relationships, existing relationships. What's your existing relationship with the leader of your organization, the leader of your country, the leader of whoever is giving you information? And the trust is based on that. If you have a consistent relationship where you have always come across and been reasonable, you have always been honest and straightforward and transparent, the trust automatically follows. But if I have had experiences with you in the past where you have not been honest, you have been unfair, you are unreasonable, and many other things, there is where the trust starts to leak off. So I'm sure that you had wonderful experiences with suppliers and different people, but there are people whose relationship with their landlord, their supplier, their whatever, their boss is not the same. So it's kind of like, oh God, what's gonna happen? So that's the trust comes from that. It comes from consistent actions and behaviors and attitudes, and that's where it's built. It's built before the event.
Right. So there's a certain sense that in this relationship, I have value. I can trust that you see my value.
Yes, my value, but it's not only about me. It's about what I get from you. It's what do you usually give to me and others.
Right.
It's about you, the person I'm interacting with, character and reliability, credibility, and these kinds of things. It's built before, and the trust happens. Now there's an event. I can trust you. Think about a relationship. You have a long-term relationship with your spouse or somebody. if some event happens and somebody comes and said, you know, this so happened, you know, and you need to do whatever, your judgment, the trust or lack of trust you have is based on actions of this person before.
What happens to the people who've had their trust broken by this situation so that their organization could not afford to support them anymore? Their organization may still have them at home because there are just too many question marks, and that may not be the fault of the organization. They've been through the ringer with this experience, but that doesn't mean that the individual employee is not nursing a wound. So there may be a rational explanation for it, but there's hurt. Trust has, especially when it's breached, there's an emotional reaction.
Exactly.
How do you navigate getting through that breach of trust or that offense to your sense of trust, to be able to trust what is still an uncertain situation going ahead?
Can I call a friend?
I don't know if that option's available in this game show.
That's a very, very hard question, Faine. There's no easy answer for something like that, especially where the break in trust, let's say, has a legitimate reason, right? I trusted that my company would be able to hold on to me and pay me, and they really can't. You see, those situations, a lot of self-introspection needs to take place, and a lot of maybe resetting your own expectations about how much you can depend on an employer. A lot of that has to go on for that person to be able to pick themselves back up and move again. It may be an opportunity for them to maybe look at their own skill set and their own resources and see if they could supplement their income in the future with some other form of income stream. It may be, an opportunity for them to take a close look at those things. But I think people in that kind of situation are hardest hit because, it's, in a sense, it's easier if you know your manager is lying and I catch them because you just kind of have that person down as, they don't tell the truth generally.
Right.
But not that my trust has been eroded in a sense. You've just acted consistently.
Yes.
But I think it's harder for people, as I said, who are in a situation where there was a genuine reason and the organization may have done whatever it could, tried what it could, and still was not able to hold on. That's difficult. But every experience, there's a lesson and there's something in it that you can advance and grow as a human being if you're willing to take the time and effort. And it's hard sometimes when you're going through pain. It's hard to sit down and talk about introspection and looking at the grass on the other side and that sort of thing, right? But it's necessary at the same time. So it may be an opportunity for that kind of self-work to go on.
Where do you see, as we go forward, trust being something that people can parlay to continue a relationship that would have existed, for example? Coming out of this, if my job is still on the table, I'm still okay. Does that deepen my trust in you as my employer? Does that double the expectation you have of me as my manager? And for those who had their trust breached in some way, maybe because of no fault of any business owner, but just the circumstances, how do they repair the trust and be able to invest themselves in another enterprise, in another go at productive work?
Faine, well, your question prior to this, and then the way how Daryl answered it, and I had this thought circulating in my head, and now it's been tied into your other question here, is that situation creates a powder keg for employees to react. Because if all of us are employed by the same company, and Daryl's retained and I am released, and we both carry out the same job, so why was I released? When Daryl was retained, right? How did they decide to hold on to Daryl and not to Anthony? And what's my reaction going to be to that, right? Because all of a sudden, all I know is I'm jobless now, and I may hold this resentment towards the company, towards my manager, but I may channel some of that towards Daryl, right? And I think I don't want to say that we've seen a little bit of it, but right on the heels of the pandemic, we've seen local business owners, some local business owners who've put their foot in their mouth with the Black Lives Matter versus the All Lives Matter issue and not understanding the context of using certain frames. Some people for their business and maybe for themselves, just always want to be relevant. So they maybe don't ascribe to one thing, but they don't fully understand it, put their foot in their mouth and say something else, not understanding the gravity of stating something like that. And now you have to put yourself, I, as a business owner, took a step back and thought about the employees in this case, right? How do I go to work in some of those environments if my employer is saying something that's detrimental to my well-being? Right?
Saying nothing.
Is it because
that's an option.
yeah? Is it because he's writing my check or putting money in an envelope at the end of the week or the end of the month that I'm okay with this?
Right.
Yeah.
Because when he tells me something now, how do I trust it based on what he's just said
Right.
or what she's just said?
Yeah.
So, as I said, this is a powder keg, especially with the emotional roller coaster that all of us have been through, no matter what our position is, what our job is, what our responsibilities are.
Do you think that this has taught us to be more scrutinizing in who we trust? You, with your scientific evaluation of things, this was a health crisis, so you would think that you would really have to pay attention to what you decided was true, where you got that information from. Do you think we're over things like
I'm such a bad
fake news
example
and
because I'm like that all the time.
okay.
But I think that, I think that a lot of people would have had that experience because of, you have to pay attention. You know, very often we're going about our daily lives on the hamster wheel and there's news going on, there's things going on in the world and we're just not paying attention. So I think that people will, right reasonable thinking people will be scrutinizing information, hopefully vetting the sources they're getting information from, being more analytical in terms of, thinking about how things happen, even going back to work, we're talking about trust. And am I trusting that really Trinidad is COVID free? Do I trust that? They've told us this. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh no, we've had COVID here since Carnival, blah, blah, blah. Don't make sense to me, but okay. So there's that. Do I trust that I'm going back into the work environment and it's really clean and appropriate for me? I'm going to be sharing spaces, I'm sharing air. So there's that kind of, so you'll have people, I think the alertness is heightened from that point of view, and that it will require time and consistent action on the parts of leaders within organizations to let people know that, because this is, so this is a HSSE issue,
right.
This is, we're getting into health and safety here, and so there's that part of it. Am I safe in the workplace? Will I remain healthy? Can I trust that when the cleaners say they're really wiping down these surfaces with things that they really don't say, not this today, that type of thing. So all these areas, yes, I think that there will be that scrutiny and that heightened alertness for some time until it is proven that, hey, you know what, I've been back to work for a month and I'm okay, my family is okay. You'll find that, and they reopen the borders and I'm still okay. So
that's an interesting scenario in the sense that, so we've debated on one hand as a country whether or not there was COVID for Carnival, but now we're debating whether there's still COVID in the country. Because there haven't been any new cases for over a month, barring that one person who came in via the air ambulance. So is this the time when trust that we placed in the organization to make sure that if they sent us out on the job for work, that we got the PPE, that we had the hand sanitizer dispensers fully stocked, the sinks were working, the soap was refilled, but there's no COVID. I mean, is this the time where trust slips up because we get slack? And what dangers lie there in that scenario for an employer, for a manager, for a company?
We're in a really, really tricky spot right now. I don't know if anybody realized that, but there are no published guidelines for the scenario we find ourselves in right now. A country that has not just controlled the spread, but it has no evidence of further cases.
Very true.
There are no published guidelines for that. And I was looking for that because the question was asked, are we really COVID free and how can we tell? All we can go by is what the authorities tell us the results of testing is, and to some degree by our own common sense.
All right.
But my son, we're having this conversation at home, my son was saying, but Daddy, we have goods still coming into the country all the time. And we just have to trust that the source that they're originating from is sanitizing them properly.
You don't spray them down too, you know. You can't
Yeah.
just trust the source. You know, God helps those who help themselves,
That
right?
has become part of
We
the
have to
routine.
trust that all of that is happening,
Yeah.
right? We also have to trust that, you know, we have always had a problem with people entering the country illegally.
Yes.
And we've never been able to get a handle on how many and when and
That's
so
right.
what, that just stopped because of
I
COVID-19?
know.
So it is entirely possible that we do have sources within the country.
It is possible.
Each person, I think, has to make their own determination of how much and how far they're going to take that element of trust, where the disease itself is concerned. There are things that we know, for example, wearing a mask can at the very least prevent you from transmitting it to other people. Maybe it stops it from coming in as well. We know, because it's universally accepted, that washing hands and sanitizing. So we have to decide individually how much of that discipline and how much of that rigor are we going to upkeep. Are we going to keep a certain distance away from, are we going to avoid the hugging? That was the first topic today, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a kind of rough one. Are we going to avoid it, right? But we as individuals have to make those decisions on our own. Yes, you know, we listen to what the authorities, what managers, what they tell us, but each person has to be mature for God for once, you know, mature enough to make decisions for the safety of yourself and the people that you love.
I want to take it back to where we started as we enter the final minutes of the conversation. So we spoke about trust in one another, beyond the organization, but just in general in one another, whether it's father, daughter, grandchildren, grandmother, co-worker, friend, etc. It diminished so much because everybody was a potential virus spreader. As we head back, for example, into June 22nd, where as long as things remain the same, we're going to be opening up that more social, communal, recreation sector.
Yeah.
Are we going to see trust continue to be repaired? Trust in each other, trust in our normal social settings? I mean, Trinis are very resilient. I'm almost sure everybody is just holding on tight for the first lime come June 22nd, bars open 9 a.m. on a morning. Is it just back to normal and how we are with each other? Or does the new normal that we've been told is going to be the new normal for a while, will that still apply? That's still healthy or over healthy dose of caution?
Yeah.
Final answers very quickly.
I prefer to err on the side of caution. All right? To be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit scared. Because I think, you know, as Trinis, we like to rush in.
Yeah.
So I am frightened.
Okay.
That if we do have some cases around and everybody just wants to go back to normal, I am a bit concerned about that. So I will be taking a cautious approach.
Frances?
Yeah. I will be taking a cautious approach, but I do think that besides my normal natural tendencies, we have to go out there and we have to trust the society a little bit because of what we've been told, because of the evidence we've seen, because guess what? It ain't over. So we need to get out there a little bit, I think, do what we need to do with caution, with some measures of caution, because it is possible that we may have to come back into lockdown. So we do have to go out there, we have to socialize a little bit with the measures that we've been given, the 10, the masks, the whatever. But we have to get back out there a little bit because it seems that we have managed it pretty well here in terms of the virus itself, you know, and we have managed it and managed to keep it out of the society at large. I think it's important for us to trust a little bit, be cautious, but go out there.
Anthony?
Yeah. I use the analogy of when you're driving, you know, you're always told you don't drive for yourself, you drive for the other people on the road.
Yes.
Right? And applying that situation to here. So I think it's really important that that same voice of reason that we trusted during all the health press conferences, that we do continue to listen to their advice. And if their advice is social distance, 10 persons max, maintain your spaces, follow these guidelines, why not? They got us through the most difficult part of this. And yes, we're leaving the health pandemic and now we're going to be dealing with the economic aspect of it. But we got through one. let's trust our sources to get through the other one again.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
And thank you all for such an enriching discourse. Thank you for trusting me to help moderate the discourse. And I appreciate all of the perspectives that you all brought to the table. I'm sure that all of our viewers on the live stream enjoyed our version, our portion of Conversation Day. We're wrapping this segment, but don't go anywhere because in a short turnaround, you'll be hitting the next topic with the next moderator and another group of guests. Take care.